Hello, it's Nicko with Food Cravings, and today we're making something very special. It's a recipe which very little is known about. The origin of this dish is as much of a mystery to you as it is to me, or maybe the other way around. But in any case, you should know me by now, and as usual, I did some digging. But wait! Technically there was no need to uncover its secrets because I invented it. Yes, that's right. It's a Chef Nicko original. Allow me to introduce you to garlic herb Parmesan pilaf with shrimp. If you've watched my video recipe for how to make shish kebab sandwich or my recipe for jambalaya and paella, you've already scratched the surface. Now, after learning how to make rice dishes 3 ways, it's time for me to show you just how to add your own twist on things. From a culinary perspective, this isn't your classic creamy Parmesan rice. No way! This dish is what you'd get if you combined together the best of Spain and Italy in a bowl. Garlic Parmesan rice pilaf with shrimp. So let's get started. First, I'm gonna show you the secret to fluffy rice that doesn't clump together or stick to the pot. Check this out. First, you'll want to rinse the starch off a few times until the water runs relatively clear. Here I've strained the water and reserve the rice in a separate strainer, only to re-add it again into the pot to repeat the process 2 or 3 times. Next, you'll want to transfer the strained rice into a separate pot and add the vegetable oil. And yes, I was on a quest for a drizzle. Now here comes the very important part, knowing when and how to stir it. You'll want to give yours a quick mix like I did here, making sure the rice is coated evenly with oil. Once that's done, what we'll do next is turn the heat to high. Once it begins to sizzle, we'll drop the heat to medium and continue stirring until nothing is stuck together. And you'll be able to tell, trust me. And that's Chef Nicko style. Next, it's on to the shrimp, which I've conveniently marinated here the night before. For our next ingredient, we'll be adding in some garlic. And as far as the quantities go, you be the judge. It's your dish. Okay, back to the recipe. We'll also need some salt and some turmeric. Here's a pro tip. Turmeric is a very powerful antioxidant, so I suggest you use it. Next, we'll need some chopped parsley, which we'll set aside for later. And we'll also need some saffron. And for this recipe, I used that of the Spanish kind. Moving right along, the next step is to add the stock to the rice, along with some lemon. Next, we're going to add the salt, turmeric, and saffron. Then the minced garlic. Next, we'll give that a stir to make sure everything's all incorporated evenly. And the turmeric dissolve. And we'll add the butter, 1 pat at a time, and we'll give it a stir. And what this will do is act like a double galvanizer of a buffer zone so that the rice doesn't stick. Here, as I tap my spoon, I'll tell you more on the blog post. After covering the pot, we let this come to a boil, at which point in time we took the lid off, placed a few sheets of paper towel over it, and then covered it with the lid. Then turned the heat down to low and let it simmer. But here's the kicker, we're only going to parboil this. Once that was done, I took the lid off and couldn't help but admire this beautiful rice I had made before dumping in the shrimp. Next, it was time to give that a stir to make sure it evenly incorporates before continuing the cooking process. And I gave it a tappy tap and used the lid to cover it with the paper towel underneath. And it was at this point in time where I set the timer to another 10 minutes. Shortly thereafter, I lifted the lid, preparing to give it another stir. This time I fluffed the rice mixture a bit and noticed the shrimp was nearly done. Everything went according to plan as things got a little hot and steamy. So after a series of folds and tucks and rolls and more stirs, I decided to do what any good chef would do, right again. I went in for a taste, and I kid you not, this just on the rice. It tasted al dente like pasta. At this point I decided I had enough. So I proceeded to the last step, re-steaming it using indirect heat for the last 10 minutes. So I closed the lid on it again, only to uncover it again 10 minutes later. And by now this was ready. It was obvious each kernel sat independent of one another. None of them were clumped up together, and certainly not stuck to the pot. As I dug in a little deeper, I was virtually excited at what I had managed to create, and I'm sure you will too, as you attempt to dazzle your family and friends with this newfound dish of perfectly golden rice. I mean, this recipe, it's foolproof! Lastly, I added in some freshly grated Parmigiano Reggiano, which I continued to incorporate fully into the rice, and I'm sure many of you remember that reserved freshly chopped parsley we had set aside. I added that in as well, and in a few minutes we'll be ready to plate up. As it looks, our trusty plate showed up just in time, as copious amounts of the rice mixture with shrimp began to appear. Man, it looked so delicious, I kept wanting it to continue piling on. But instead, the forecast called for a drizzle of more reggiano and some parsley. Isn't that just gorgeous? Right about now, I couldn't take it anymore, so I had to go in for a taste. So I went in spoon first, and at first bite, I was greeted with an instant burst of flavors. The al dente chewy rice, along with the subtle tang of the lemon and a little bit of freshness from the parsley, not to mention the bite of the reggiano and cheesy goodness overall, and oh my god, the succulent shrimp, made for a perfect meal. Now that you've learned how to make garlic herb parmesan pilaf with shrimp, you may add this quick and easy recipe to the arsenal of weeknight meals. I hope you've enjoyed this Chef Nicko special. For ingredient amounts and more info, please visit www.chefnickostyle.blogspot.com. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. I'll see you in the next video recipe.